At a time when public trust in journalism continues to erode and partisanship clouds perception, an organization is stepping forward with a bold mission to rebuild the foundation of trust through transparency, integrity, and accountability. Joining me today, a friend of E&P and someone I've known for over a decade, Walter Hussman, a fourth-generation publisher, one of the industry's most enduring advocates for impartial reporting. He spent nearly 5 decades leading the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette and the empire of WEHCO Media. Walter's legendary commitment to the principle of giving the news without fear or favor, I have to say, isn't just legendary, it's a call to action. Walter, welcome to E&P Reports.
Thank you.
This is your second visit here, sir, so we're honored to have you on a return visit. And joining Walter and on the show for the first time is Rufus Friday, whose career has spanned some of the nation's most respected local newsrooms from Kentucky to Washington State, now serves as the Executive Director of the newly launched Center for Integrity in News Reporting, or CFINR. Together, Walter and Rufus are urging an entire industry to take a long, hard look in the mirror. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rufus, but the goal isn't just to critique the current media landscape, it's to change it. You're leading an ambitious effort to promote clear, published core values in every newsroom, and also reward ethical journalism and reinstall confidence in the role of a free and fair press. Do I have that pretty much right, Rufus?
You definitely do, Mike. And like we said before, and I've had some conversations with you, the center was not created to be a critic. We want to collaborate, and we want to work with those individuals, those entities, those media platforms to help rebuild the public's trust in media.
Today, we speak with both of these gentlemen about what it will take to move journalism forward and why, if the industry doesn't act now, we may lose more than just trust. If journalism is to survive and thrive, it must not just report the news, but prove every day why it deserves the public trust. We'll break that down right after this. Stick around.
This episode of E&P Reports is sponsored by Elite Insights, the trusted partner behind some of the most successful Best Of campaigns in local media today. Elite Insights provides an easy-to-administer, self-serve platform that helps publishers generate new revenue, grow audience engagement, and capture valuable first-party data, all through the power of community recognition. Their software is designed specifically for local media companies, with user-friendly tools that make it simple to launch, promote, and monetize Best Of contests year after year. Publishers love how quickly these programs deliver results, not just for their bottom line, but also for deepening relationships with readers and local businesses. Elite Insights believes in supporting local journalism through tools that actually work, one publisher partnership at a time. To learn more, visit eliteinsights.io. That's eliteinsights.io.
Walter, I'm going to kick it off with you. What was the spark behind finding the Center for Integrity in News Reporting? Was there a tipping point of some kind? What made you say, I got to do this now?
Yes, there was in early 2024. But some background on that, I could see trust eroding in traditional news organizations for years. And it seemed to really get worse around 2017. And that's when we decided we needed to establish a statement of core values and publish it in our newspapers every day so our readers could know exactly what our values were and hold us accountable to those values. And I was amazed we had such a favorable response. It really did help us with trust among our readers. And so I had some background in that. And of course, that was the reason why we endowed the journalism school at the University of North Carolina, thinking if we could get one of the top journalism schools in America to adopt a statement of values, which they had agreed to do, we could get other journalism schools to do it. And that would be a first step in trying to start rebuilding trust. And But back to 2024, things just continued to deteriorate and trust continued to decline. And the low point was actually, it was in January, I think, of 2023. The Cronkite School at Arizona State published a report called Beyond Objectivity, And they found 75 editors around the country that thought objectivity was an outdated concept and we needed to replace it. That was one of the most, I guess that was the low point, very depressing to hear that. And I thought, well, I don't really know anything much I can do. I'll just try to do an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal to say how much I disagree with that. And I did, but before they published mine, they published a column by Bret Stephens in the New York Times, and he really sharply criticized the report. And then a month after my Wall Street Journal piece, which was just a couple of weeks after Bret's, Marty Barron wrote the best one, an op-ed in the Washington Post, and he really summed it up by saying, we want objective judges, we want objective juries, we want objective scientists, we want objective doctors. Why do we think the public wouldn't want objective news reporters and news editors? And 2 months after that, A.G. Sulzberger, the relatively new publisher at the New York Times, wrote a piece in the Columbia Journalism Review calling for, independent journalism. That was the spark, the reaction by those people to that report at Arizona State. And I thought, it's one thing for a publisher of a regional newspaper in Arkansas and a few other places to talk about values and loss of trust. But when you get a nationally known columnist, you get a nationally known and highly respected editor like Marty Barron, get a nationally known publisher of the New York Times, they're all arguing for this. Well, that is encouraging. And so I went from very discouraged to very encouraged, but I thought it can't just be some op-eds. There has to be some entity or some organization or maybe even a center that stands up for the standards of news reporting that earn so much trust in the 20th century. Over 70% of Americans trusted the news media in the 1970s. And it was those standards that helped build that trust. And so that was the spark that said, we need to, if somebody else isn't going to do this, we need to do it.
And there you go, forming the CFINR. So let's swing it to Rufus. Rufus, you're the executive director. What's your elevator pitch when someone says to you, what the heck does this organization do or stand for? Give it to us. Give us the pitch.
Well, I kind of always keep it brief. I say, the Center for Integrity in News Reporting, we exist to tackle just one of democracy's biggest threats, and that is what we've seen is the erosion of trust in news reporting and journalism in general. The center, we support, we award, and we also promote fair and impartial and objective news reporting because, we feel like that if you can't trust the news, you just can't make informed decisions as a citizen. And also, that restoring that trust, we feel like it's just not a media issue. It's a civic one as well. And our key is getting news media platforms to adopt and, more importantly, prominently display or publish a statement of core journalistic values.
All right. So, Walter, why is publicly displaying a concise statement like you have, why is this the center of the strategy? I mean, there might be other avenues, some may argue with you, to invest this energy and these dollars. Why do you believe this is the beginning? This is what we really need to do.
Well, this is something where there's empirical evidence that it worked. In 2017, when we started publishing this, one person called and said, we're finally glad to see someone publish what their journalistic standards are. And another person wrote me and said, now I know how to hold you accountable. And I got comments. Of course, I live in Little Rock where we publish the paper, and I see people all the time and they say, I really like that statement you publish on page 2 every day. And incidentally, it's not a full page. It's like a 2-column by 6 or 7 inch. But it's there every day to let everybody know what our standards are. So we use that for this center because we know it worked. And why not use something that's worked elsewhere? If it worked for us, I see no reason why it wouldn't work for other news organizations. One other little corollary to that, too, is I mentioned to my daughter, who 2.5 years ago became the publisher of our newspaper as I stepped down. And I mentioned to her, I said, we're constantly reading about a lot of controversy erupting at newsrooms around the country, from the New York Times, the Washington Post, the CBS, just a lot of different news organizations. So we don't seem to have a lot of controversy in our newsroom. And she said, well, my take on that is, because we publish these core values every day, if we interview a new applicant to work for us as a reporter, and they see those core values and they don't agree with them, they want to be an advocacy reporter, well, they just go somewhere else to work. So I think it's important not only to communicate to your readers, but to communicate to the people who work at your news organization what your standards are.
Rufus, now that we've accepted, and I buy into this, you and I have had a number of conversations where I think this is a good place to start. I mean, why not be, and I always say, when you say to the readers and the staff, because I'm an ad guy, I say, and the advertisers, everyone should know this is the basis of what you do. And I remember you and I chatted about the fact that our industry has done a lousy job over the last century or so telling people and informing them of who we are and what our values are. But why strategically is your organization going for those mid-level markets? I discovered that. You want to be in you want to start by having markets, 25 through 75? Be the first? What is the rationale for that, sir?
Well, Walter and I've had conversations about this, but we really feel, Mike, that these mid-sized markets, they're the heart of American journalism, and they're big enough to influence regional discourse, but they're small enough to maintain that deep connection with their communities. And those news organizations in these markets, they often still hold a strong trust advantage over the national outlets. And we feel like if we can support some integrity focused initiatives there first, from those core value statements, then ultimately down the road we can take it nationally. But we feel like that the heart of journalism, it really does exist in those U.S. mid-sized markets.
What do you say, and I'm going to stay with you, Rufus, just for a second. What do you say when you're reaching out on the phone and you're talking to someone who maybe controls a number of newsrooms or a number of news publishing organizations, that you say, look, they say, I just don't have the time. I don't have the energy. I got enough problems right now just paying the bills. How do you make your plea? Or what is your counter to that objection?
It's not that hard. I mean, the thing about it is, I've had a couple of conversations with a number of organizations that control multiple markets, and I've told them that we've got examples. We've got some entities that have already developed, statement of core values. I'm more than happy to share those with those individuals as well. Even offered to come into those markets and sit down and have conversations with those news directors as well.
Walter, I lied at the beginning. I said this was your second appearance, and this is your third. The first one, just the moment I took over EMP and started this series 5 years ago, I interviewed you to check on the iPad experiment, which I know is going very well. But then you gave me a call and you said, look, I'm starting an award. I'm giving out money. And we were like the place where you announced it on this very program, and we helped you launch that. This was before you got Rufus on board and all that. Tell us about these journalism awards.
So essentially, once the spark was there to do something and create some entity, then the mission is, how do we rebuild the public trust in news reporting in America? I want to distinguish, it's news reporting, not opinion. We just need trust in news reporting. You don't have to trust opinion. Opinion's out there to agree with or disagree or make you think or whatever. And opinion is important, but this is on news reporting. So I run around and talk to a lot of people I really respect in the news industry. People like, for example, Marty Barron. And I would ask them, what should be the first thing that we do? There's lots we could do, but what would be the first thing we should do? And the consensus was, the first thing you should do is recognize and reward people who are reporting impartially and fairly and objectively. And so just fortunately, I happened shortly thereafter to meet a professor from Princeton named Robert George, and he had just started some awards, and he said, you're not going to get much impact by picking up the phone and telling somebody they won an award. You need to give these awards at a seated dinner at an impressive place. You need to get a nationally known speaker, and you need to get a good audience. And so, since we really didn't have any idea how to go about any of this, we just used his formula. So we were able to get the Library of Congress, and we got Brett Baer to be our speaker for the first event. And we got Democrats and Republicans and Pulitzer Prize winners and CEOs and chairmen of Fortune 500 companies and chancellors and provosts. And so we had a good audience. We wanted to make sure these journalists, these reporters and writers realized there was a great audience there to observe, their accomplishments.
We're going to wind it up with you, Rufus. This is your chance. You got hundreds, if not thousands, of news publishers that touch this program every month. You use the term that this is a collective responsibility. Well, we've corralled them together. Do your pitch. How can a publisher find out what they can do next to get their core values out there? Go ahead.
Well, first and foremost, they can reach out to our site, reach out to me. My information is out there as well. One of the questions I wanted to let you know is that there is no significant budget constraint for doing this as well, for publishing and agreeing to display a statement of core values. We feel like transparency is going to be one of the recipes for bringing individuals back to a news media organization's site or newspaper or cable show, if they can just display your values.
Mike, one other thing I might mention, because you kind of referred to this in one of your questions, anytime you tackle a problem this big, there are going to be moments of encouragement and moments of discouragement. And I went through that 17 years while we competed with another newspaper in Little Rock. So we've had moments of encouragement and discouragement. Some of the things you see happen today are kind of discouraging, but we've really been encouraged by some things that have happened in the past year. For example, one of the people who saw what we were doing and attended our first dinner, they decided they were going to pay for all the awards in the dinner for this year, 2025, and they've already sent us a check to pay for the awards in the dinner for next year. That's an encouraging moment. Another thing that's encouraging is because I guess I've been in the news business all my life and know a lot of people. I've been able to get into the offices of the top news people like A.G. Sulzberger at the New York Times, Will Lewis and Matt Murray at the Washington Post, had a direct phone conversation with Patrick Soon-Shiong, and they all like what we're doing, and I think they feel like if their news organizations had a stronger reputation for being impartial, they'd get more paid subscribers.
Hear, hear.
And so I think it's really encouraging to me that maybe somewhere down the organization, people don't believe in these values, but the people leading them do, and they support it. In fact, the Washington Post, we asked them, they said, how can we help? And I said, you could make a donation. And they thought, oh my goodness, well, how much? And I said, no money. I don't want money. I want a full page in the Washington Post the next day to recognize these reporters who reported impartially and fairly and objectively. And they did. They carried through. They had that full page in the front section of their newspaper. Another really encouraging thing happened in the first year. There were a lot of well-known news organizations that didn't have reporters compete, didn't submit entries. But this year, we had reporters that work at news organizations, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, CBS, NBC, the U.S. edition of The Guardian, and BBC America. They all submitted entries to try to compete, to be impartial, objective, and fair. To me, that's really encouraging. And I'd say the last really encouraging thing is the first year, 2024, my wife and I had to put in most of the money to get this thing off the ground, although we were getting donations in 2024 too. In 2025, we're probably going to collect over $2 million in donations, and over 2/3 of that will not be from our family or my wife and I, will be from outside sources. So this is resonating with people, and they want to support it.
I think that defines what momentum truly is. And I congratulate you, and I congratulate Rufus on those amazing successes. Good job, gentlemen. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate you.